Topic of the day is frog conservation. My guest today is Dr. Kerry Kriger. He is the founder of Save the Frogs, an amphibian conservation effort on a mission to protect amphibian populations around the world and to promote a society that respects and appreciates nature and wildlife. If you've never met him before, I'm happy to introduce him here to you now. He is the Sheldon Cooper of the ecology world. Dr. Kerry Kriger, welcome.
Hi, Edgar. It's great to be here. Thank you.
Good. I was glad I was able to speak with you again. You are a world traveler. You go all over the world doing what you do. Where are you right now?
I am in Santiago, Chile, in South America.
Okay, so you're a little south from California here.
Yeah, I sure am.
Okay.
South America is a really important place for amphibians. There's actually the world's highest biodiversity of amphibians, not in Chile, but up in Colombia, Ecuador, Brazil, Peru, in that area, there are many amphibian species.
Yeah, there's one or two there, isn't there?
Yeah, there are.
Yeah, I always see you posting from different parts of the world, a lot of places in South America. It's really great to see that, and I like your flute videos, too.
Thank you very much.
I play Native American flute. That's a lot easier than what you're doing with that thing, though.
Okay, yeah, I play the classical music of North India.
Yeah, I got to get one of those things and try my hand at that thing if I can get it to make any noise. All right, you're the founder of Save the Frogs. Tell those listening, may not have heard of Save the Frogs before, what is Save the Frogs and what is their mission?
Save the Frogs is a worldwide movement to protect amphibian species from extinction. Amphibians are rapidly disappearing around the world. About 1/3 of the world's amphibian species are on the verge of extinction. And so we're a nonprofit organization. We are officially based in California, but we do work across the USA and around the world, primarily focused at environmental education. So a lot of what we do is creating educational materials about amphibians, ways to protect them. We lead in-person and online courses about amphibian conservation. We run eco tours and frogging expeditions to take people out to the wild, introduce them to amphibians in their native habitat. And we also have a variety of programs such as building wetlands, protecting habitat, restoring habitat. But the essence of what we do always comes back to environmental education, educating people, inspiring them to take action for the environment, and empowering them with the tools and the training that they need to make a positive difference in their own communities.
Yeah, that's really amazing. You do a lot of things. You have different methods for doing the education work. Why frogs? What made you get into this conservation effort? Basically, why frogs?
Yeah, I grew up in Virginia in the eastern USA, and when I was young, my parents built a pond on the property, and I spent a lot of time down at the pond. I would hear frogs calling, see the frogs. Didn't think about them too much, but eventually I spent a lot of time camping out and traveling around the world, and I'd see a lot of environmental destruction, and I wanted to do something with my career to benefit the environment. And I started thinking about what that would be, realized that I liked spending time at streams a whole lot, and I was thinking about what lives on streams, and found out that frogs were rapidly disappearing around the world. So I went to Australia. I spent 4 years in Australia doing my PhD in environmental science, and that was focused on the amphibian disease chytridiomycosis, the ecology of chytridiomycosis in eastern Australia. And I spent a lot of time out in the rainforest, spent a lot of time with frogs, and just realized frogs are just such incredible animals. And my skill set was primarily focused on frogs, so I wanted to stick with that because that's what I knew most about. And when I returned to America, I realized there was no nonprofit organization dedicated exclusively to protecting amphibians, and there was a lot that was not getting done as far as educating the public primarily. People would always ask me, why frogs? Why do you care about frogs? Why should they care about frogs? And I knew that if people don't know that frogs are disappearing, and if people don't know that frogs are worth saving, then it's going to be very difficult to protect frogs. So I founded Save the Frogs in 2008 with a mission to protect amphibian populations and to promote a society that respects and appreciates nature and wildlife. And there's always there's so many threats to frogs, so many frog populations in trouble, and fortunately so many ways to save them that we're still going at it about 9 years later.
Right, and it's great that you're out there. I mean, you are 100% dedicated to this conservation effort. You mentioned you mentioned one of the threats, the chytrid fungus. What are some of the threats to the frogs? What do they need saving from?
Yeah, there's 6 main threats to amphibian populations worldwide, and all of these differ in different locations to different species. The largest problem is habitat destruction, and that is definitely the number one threat to lowland amphibian species around the world. And that's because most humans live in the lowlands. We like to live near the water. We like to live in flat places. And also because most of our national parks and protected areas tend to be up in the mountains because mountains look nice. So down in the lowlands, there's a conflict. There's a lot of humans and not a lot of protected land. So people's houses, shopping malls, roads, agriculture, all that spells problems for amphibians. Other problems are pollution and pesticides. Billions of pounds of pesticides being used every year. Some of these can turn male frogs into females. They cause hermaphroditism, all types of developmental problems, pollution coming from coal and dirty energy sources, pollution coming from people's waste coming from their houses and their vehicles. There's also problems. Climate change is a problem for amphibians because as places dry up, and certain places in the world are getting noticeably drier, then amphibian habitat dries up. So if it stops raining much and ponds don't fill up, that's a problem. I was out in Briones in California, east of San Francisco, a couple of years ago, and we found at least 7 dead newts, dried up newts in this dried up pond basin. And also that's a problem in cloud forests around the world where there's lots of biodiversity. As things warm up, those clouds rise and habitat can dry up. The biggest problem for frogs and amphibians in high altitude areas up in the mountains worldwide is chytridiomycosis, an infectious disease that causes problems with their skin, and it spreads easily, especially in streams. In cool mountain streams, it does really well, and the streams can carry the chytrid fungi long distances. And when the chytrid fungus first appears in a new location, those populations can just completely disappear within a matter of months. Other problems are people taking frogs out of the wild for pets, for food, for bait, laboratories, zoos. As if people take too many frogs out of the wild, then the populations have a problem. And then the final major problem is invasive species, non-native species. In California and a lot of the American West, where American bullfrogs are not native, they're often imported primarily for food. They can escape established populations, and they love to eat native frogs. The other main invasive species that's a problem is trout, also mosquito fish too. Trout and mosquito fish are often added to ponds where they don't belong or streams, and they love to eat frogs and tadpoles and eggs.
Things get off balance there. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah, it's always best to stick with native species.
Yeah, generally you think of these exotic frogs. You know, you see beautiful photos of red-eyed tree frogs and other frogs around the world. But people maybe they don't think about amphibians, frogs here in the United States. Are the frogs here endangered too?
Yeah, there's certainly plenty of endangered frog species in the USA, and there's actually federally protected species under the Endangered Species Act, and there's actually a fairly long list of species that are awaiting decision to be added to the Endangered Species Act. So in America, I think it's about 20 to 25% of species are endangered, which worldwide, it's about 1/3 of species. So I wouldn't say that America is the most severe threat area, but there are definitely plenty of endangered species, some of them on the verge of being extinct.
I think several years ago, a lot of people would eat frogs, like frog legs. I think what is the California red-legged frog, the victims of one of those, or what happened with that species?
Yeah, the California red-legged frog was nearly eaten to extinction by the California gold miners in the 1800s. And there are certainly a lot of frogs still being taken out of the wild. Florida pig frogs were heavily harvested. People still do take frogs out of the wild to eat them in America. But in general, in many parts of the world, certainly the developed world, a lot of the frogs being eaten now are more coming from frog farms. And that may sound like maybe that's better because they're coming from a farm, but a lot of the frogs being farmed are the American bullfrogs, even if they're not in their native habitat. So there are farms of American bullfrogs in Taiwan, Venezuela, Brazil, China, different parts of the world. And the bullfrog is a very large frog. They have a very large mouth, and they do inevitably escape these farms and establish populations and eat native frogs.
Yeah, it's interesting how the bullfrog population kind of exploded out here. The biologists here, of course, they hate that species because they're not native here, and they end up eating other species, of course, so they put other animals in danger too. But you do the frog conservation all over the world. You talked a little bit about some of the education work you do to help spread your message. What are some of the other things? I know you do a lot of talks with school children. I've seen you do that, and we've had you come out and do a talk for one of our groups before. And then, what are some of the other methods of the education that you do? You mentioned some of them earlier.
Yeah, I definitely like going out to schools. I've given at least 350 amphibian presentations since founding Save the Frogs. So I go to schools, universities, government agencies, community groups, and basically just educate people about frogs, inspire them to care, and get people active. Like, what I really want is people doing frog conservation in their community. So one of our most successful programs is Save the Frogs Day, which we've been running for 9 years, and we've held over, with the assistance of our supporters and volunteers worldwide, over 1,200 Save the Frogs Day events in 60 countries. So what I do is try to provide people with ideas and inspiration and educational materials, and then they go out, they set up an event. Save the Frogs Day takes place the last Saturday of April every year, and they go out into their community and do something educational or conservation related for the amphibians. And so we've had all types of events. We've had protests at the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency to call for a federal ban on atrazine, which is the herbicide that can turn male frogs into females. We've had parades in the capital of Bangladesh. Scientific conferences take place about amphibians. Teachers having their kids drop frog art. We've had 5K races in Seattle, and scientists taking people out to show them frogs in their native habitat. So really lots of different ways to get involved on Save the Frogs Day. Usually it's a pretty fun event, and we let people be creative, whatever they want to do that they think will be successful and enjoyable and benefit amphibians. We encourage them to do that. And we have a page on our website, SaveTheFrogs.com. There's a page specifically about Save the Frogs Day, SaveTheFrogs.com/day. And there's tips for event organizers and lots of ideas on how people can get involved. And actually, for the next 3 months, we're running an online series that takes place every 2 weeks. And Save the Frogs biologists will be on live on video conference, helping people with their Save the Frogs Day event. So if you want to hold a Save the Frogs Day event, then that is definitely a good way to get personalized assistance in ensuring that you're having a successful event. We also have other online events where once a month we are training people online on how to build wetlands. So if anyone's ever wanted to build a frog pond in their backyard or at their school, then they can come online, and our wetland coordinator will be taking any questions and giving a different a presentation on a different topic related to wetlands each week. Actually, later today, I think it's at 5 p.m. Oh, sorry. I guess you edit that because it won't come out today. I'll stop there.
Okay, so you do have events going on all over the world, and just simplify that. Save the Frogs Day is something anyone can participate in. If you're a teacher, you guys can just bring up frog conservation and have the kids do an activity, something like that. Or if you're just you got nothing to do, you can go out and hold signs up somewhere where people can see it. There's a number of things people do. You said people can be pretty creative with it.
Yeah, we want everybody involved in Save the Frogs Day, and we actually have pages on SaveTheFrogs.com specifically for teachers and for students with lots of ways that they can get their school involved. It's so important to get schools involved in amphibian conservation, and that's actually one of the reasons I started Save the Frogs, is because I knew that when I was growing up, nobody ever taught me anything about frogs except possibly how to cut them open. So there was no amphibian conservation taking place in schools when I was growing up. And even when I founded Save the Frogs, it would be rare. It's not on any, as far as I know, state curriculum standards that you in a public school, you must be teaching your students that amphibians are in trouble, even though it's one of our most significant environmental crises.
Right. No, it's great. There's a lot of ways people can participate. I want to ask you a question. You brought it up a bit, and then we'll talk more about some of the progress you guys have made. Many people listening, of course, might be people who work with captive bred frogs, either breeding them or keeping them as pets. You mentioned pets before. Where does Save the Frogs stand on frogs as pets in light of captive breeding today, and then as opposed to stuff taken from the wild? So frogs as pets.
Yeah, so that's a great topic, and I know there's a lot of interest in that. And we do have a page on our site, SaveTheFrogs.com/pets, and I encourage everybody listening to go look through that page. And yeah, basically there are various conservation issues related to the pet trade, and pet frogs can inspire people to enjoy amphibians and to go into a life of amphibian conservation, and that's a good thing, and pet frogs can be used to educate people. At the same time, a lot of frogs that people are purchasing, they may be taken out of the wild, they may be non-native species, they may have diseases. So those are things that concern me. My scientific background relates to disease, and I know that diseases, you can't find them just by looking at them with your eye. You need molecular tests, and so diseases can get spread around. So that's a concern to me. What we promote is that if people do feel the need to have a pet, that they are very responsible and that they are very educated about that. And what I encourage is that the people involved in the pet community become more proactive with educating people. And I guess what I hear a lot is that people assume that everyone within the pet community is educated about these issues, but there are so many pet frogs being sold in the world outside the people who actively spend time learning about amphibians that it is a large issue. So that's what we promote. What I like is people going out into the wild. I think for me, that's the best way to experience amphibians, is to go out into the wild and see frogs. So that's what I hope people will do. But if they are going to have a frog as a pet, then they should make sure that they're very educated about the issues involved and that they are as responsible a pet owner as they can possibly be. All
right. Talk to me about some of the progress you've made. You started Save the Frogs. Where'd you start from, and how far have you come? How far have you come?
I started just as a guy with a vision of having a world that cared about amphibians, and we've come a long way. We have chapters around the world. We have a very successful group in Ghana, in West Africa. They have been around for 5 years, and we have staff in Ghana. We have several university chapters in Ghana. West Africa is a really important place for amphibian conservation because the vast majority of their rainforests have already been destroyed, and the frogs are under significant threat. And the people there are also living in extreme poverty, and they are dependent on healthy ecosystems. But the problem is that as it gets more and more difficult to get work and to get money, what they're doing is going into the forest, extracting trees, extracting frogs, extracting wildlife from the forest, and it creates a negative feedback loop. So we've gotten a whole lot done in Ghana. We do work with the giant squeaker frog, which is one of the world's most endangered frogs. When we started working to protect this frog, there were only 13 known individuals of this frog remaining. Since then, we've gotten the village nearby involved, and we've planted 15,000 plus trees to reforest the habitat for this frog.
This is a wild population?
They only exist in the wild, and nobody knows how to breed them in captivity, and their population is so small that to pull any of them out of the wild would be dangerous. So what we're focused on is training the villagers in alternative livelihoods, because currently they're doing things like chopping down trees. They're starting fires in the forest to collect wild honey so that they don't get stung when they're collecting the honey, and this burns down a lot of the forest. So we're training them how to do beekeeping, which will get them more money and make them so they don't have to go into the forest, destroying the forest. So we've actually, on last count, there were now 28 of these frogs in the wild. So if we can keep doubling the population of this frog, it would be fantastic. Now, we also have a lot of efforts in America. We've been involved with the restoration or creation of 29 different wetlands. So that, to me, is one of the best ways that we can assist amphibian populations, because habitat destruction is the number one cause of amphibian decline. So if we can restore habitat, protect habitat, create habitat, then it's going to do a lot for amphibians. What we do is, whenever possible, when we're building these wetlands, we hold a wetland construction workshop so that we invite people to come out and teach them the entire process so that they can go off to their own property and build wetlands. So we encourage everyone out there, if you're a landowner, to go visit savethefrogs.com/wetlands and get involved building wetlands on your property. Another thing that we do is lead eco tours, and we have had eco tours in Belize, Ecuador, Peru. This June, we're returning. June 2017, we returned to Ecuador. We still have some spots available. We're also going for the first time to Costa Rica, July 2017. And we hope to also be taking people to Ghana eventually. So one thing we have right now is we're offering a free eco tour. We have a eco tour sweepstakes going on. So people can go to savethefrogs.com/free, enter to win a free eco tour. And these eco tours are generally 10 to 12 days in really incredible rainforests. We take people out. We find lots of amphibian species, lots of other wildlife in some of the most beautiful places in the world. So encourage people to go savethefrogs.com/free. If you win, we'll even give you $750 cash for your airfare. And these eco tours are great ways to introduce people to the wild. A lot of people who come on these trips have never been to the rainforest, and they leave with experiences that they'll always remember, and hopefully that inspire them to protect amphibians for many years to come.
No, it's great that you guys offer that. It seems like a lot you do. You mentioned also some of the small populations that exist of certain species. Some animals have such a small range. It's pretty incredible. People won't believe they just within a few hundred yards. I guess there's some species that are just that live in that small space. What are some of those that are like?
Yeah, that's right. There's another frog that we work with in Ghana. It's the Togo slippery frog, and as the name suggests, it was originally found in Togo, which is the country east of Ghana, but they have not been seen in Togo in many years. And to the best of our knowledge, this frog lives on 2 total streams, both in the Atiwa Hills of Ghana. So the only place known is in this one mountain range on 2 total streams. And there's a good number of frogs that are like that, especially these montane species. They may be cut off from other habitats that they could inhabit, so they've just evolved on this one total mountaintop. And that's a big problem with climate change, in that if it gets warmer and frogs have to move up the mountain to stay cool, eventually they hit the top of the mountain and there's nowhere left for them to go. And there are plenty of species that are just restricted to a single mountain.
Yeah, you see them have to creep up higher and higher, huh?
Uh-huh.
All right, Dr. Kerry Kriger, I wish I could talk frogs with you all day. I know I can learn a lot from you. Give a message to those listening. If you had the attention of the entire world, now we don't have that big an audience, but if you if you had one thing you could say to everybody, what would you tell them?
I'd say that everybody has the power to save the frogs, and that Save the Frogs welcomes the support of everybody out there. And on SaveTheFrogs.com, there's all the information that you need, certainly, to get started. And if you want to assist in any other way, then you can always send us an email. People can find us on social media at Save the Frogs on any of the main social media sites. And we're always open to a conversation about frogs and how to save them. And we welcome everybody's support and save the frogs.
Dr. Kerry Kriger of Save the Frogs, SaveTheFrogs.com. I appreciate you talking with me here today, and I hope we can talk again sometime.
Thanks a lot, Edgar.
Thanks for being here with us. You have a good day. That was Dr. Kerry Kriger of the Save the Frogs organization, a worldwide effort to preserve these amazing animals. Thank you, everybody, for listening. If you enjoyed this program, there'll be more like it. So go ahead and subscribe to my YouTube channel, the Edgar Ortega channel. And you can find us also on Facebook. And just search the Edgar Ortega Radio Show and follow our page there, and you can contact me. Until next time, you've been listening to the Edgar Ortega Radio Show.